Hi, I'm Louise Lalaurie. I'm a translator from French, and I'm going to read to you from Lean on Me by Serge Joncour, a Paris love story which won France's Prix Interallié in 2018 and which is publishing at the beginning of March from Gallic books in the UK, co-translated by myself and Jane Aitken. Ludovic had lived in Paris for 2 years now, and still he had no friends and scarcely any acquaintances. He saw practically no one. He could manage his time however he liked, provided he attended 3 debriefings each month at the office. The only people he spoke to otherwise were his targets, social contact of a sort. His one big fear was coming upon a family scene. Parents with small children, a mother with a babe in arms, toddlers running about under her feet, a father out of work. In those cases, the children were always used against him, to make him feel guilty. The parents would say, "You can't do this to me. Yes, I owe money, but I have 4 children to feed. You can't do this to us." And it hurt him to think of the children he would never have with Mathilde. And the pain did not make him kinder, more understanding. On the contrary, it made him seethe with anger. And he was afraid that one day he would really go too far, not in response to a raised voice or a bad-tempered gesture, but because of some low blow, a vile attempt to elicit his pity by flaunting a family, exhibiting everything he had been denied. And so, every time he turned up outside a new door, every time he rang a new bell, he feared the worst. Experience had taught him to be very careful. Whatever happened, whatever was said, he'd had his last chance. He must not lose his temper another time. Before, there had been a pair of turtle doves nesting in the highest branches. On fine days you could hear them coo above the chirping of the other birds, or the blackbird's call, a soothing, refreshing sound. But this September, back from holiday, Aurore had found handfuls of beige feathers scattered beneath the trees. When she looked up, she had seen 2 quite different birds, intensely black, 2 huge crows, their plumage gleaming like gunmetal. Since then there had been no cooing, no turtle doves. The crows had driven them away. Or maybe they ate them alive. Honestly, Aurore, those birds are all you talk about. When you confide in a friend, you expect her to agree with you, to understand without the need for explanation. Not so with Andrea. She had been living in India for the last 3 years, using her failed fashion label as an excuse to drop everything and start a new life in Madras. A life more authentic, apparently, more like really living. She only came back to Paris twice a year, and each time they met, Aurore found her a little crazier, more irrational, no longer on her wavelength at all. Life is about staying as true to who you really are as possible, and you, Aurore, are anything but a businesswoman. It's way too cutthroat for you. It's a dog-eat-dog world. I should know. Heading back to the office, Aurore told herself she should stop talking about the birds, or everyone would start to think she was crazy. But she knew she must cross the courtyard again tonight. Even at home, she might open her windows and find them right there in the branches outside. Even when she clapped her hands, they did not fly away. She shouldn't have to put up with this. She had read on the internet that new, bigger birds were taking over in Paris because of climate change. There were seagulls everywhere already, and now the crows had come, scaring away the sparrows and swallows. Nature seemed hell-bent on proving the survival of the fittest. She had read, too, on a science website that crows were among the most intelligent animals, above even primates in their ability to play tricks and display cunning. Researchers in Japan had observed them placing nuts on the road to be crushed under the tires of passing cars. They would wait, then swoop down to retrieve the kernels. This proof of their slyness horrified her. Perhaps it was the image of the crushed shells. More than once she had consulted online forums in search of tips for scaring them away, but all she had found were wild, superstitious claims about crows as harbingers of bad luck, and the perils of living alongside them. They were backed up by legends and superstition. Crows had been put on earth to betray mankind. After all, the first creature released from Noah's Ark had been a crow that had never returned with news of the end of the flood, because it was too busy pecking flesh from the bodies beached by the retreating waters. It was 9 p.m. when Aurore came through the door. After an interminable discussion with her accountant, she had left the office late and was exhausted. She wanted to step into the all-embracing darkness of her courtyard, but instead found herself bombarded with light from all sides. One lamp above the porch, another by the gate, even the one on the far side of the courtyard. It was almost unheard of for all of them to be triggered at the same time. But worst of all was the cawing, which got louder as she walked through the lodge. There was a hint of frenzy in it this evening, as if something had maddened the birds. Fractious crows were harbingers of doom, according to the Romans, or was it the Greeks? She wasn't sure. But this was just too much. Some commotion in the courtyard had made the birds more agitated than ever. Sick with fear, Aurore clanged the gate shut behind her and looked towards the shrubbery. She couldn't believe her eyes. The bushes at the foot of the trees were moving. There must be animals rooting around in there. She could hear their growls and sinister cries. Even the ivy tree leaves on the tree trunks were trembling now, which made the crow's caw louder still. Instinctively, Aurore charged in, swinging her bag and beating it against the bushes. She quite forgot her fear in her determination to break up the fight and chase the furious creatures away. But it was a man who scrambled to his feet amid the foliage. She stared at him, dumbfounded, as if confronting a burglar. Leaves masked his face, but she recognized him as the neighbour she disliked meeting in the courtyard, the one who eyed her with a smile that made her shiver, like the excitable crows overhead. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Ludovic would not reply in similar vein. He kept his calm. A cool head was the strongest weapon against such rude, aggressive behaviour. Up in the trees, the crows' rasping cries were louder still, disturbed by the presence of the humans below. Their cawing took on a shriller, more hysterical pitch now. Ludovic shouldered his way out of the dense tangle of branches, emerging with twigs and ivy stuck to his sweater. As he made to step over the low wall that enclosed the miniature jungle, he raised his arms to show off his catch. 2 cats, held by the scruff of their necks, the poor animals dangling in his grip like freshly caught vermin. He held them high and stepped towards Aurore. "You can't hold them like that. You're hurting them." "Don't worry about them." "You have no business messing around in there. It's full of flowers which I planted." With the yowling cats and the cawing crows and this guy trampling all over her flowers, it was all Aurore could do to contain her anger. "I didn't trample your flowers. I was just fetching the cats. They belong to Mademoiselle Mercier, the little old lady on the 3rd floor. She's been frantic with worry, thought she'd lost them, but cats are cowards, really. They never go far." Aurore wasn't listening. She was busy inspecting the flower beds to check that her flowers and her parsley, sage and basil had survived. She was shaking with rage at this vandal. Ludovic stood watching her, still holding the cats. "You should give those plants some space. They shouldn't have been put in so close to the hedge. It starves the roots. Box is toxic, you know." "What do you know about it?" "I know that everything needs to be cut back, even the trees. The branches are touching the roof up there. If there was a strong wind, I hate to think what kind of damage they'd cause." "Are you one of the owners here?" "No, but I know a thing or two about trees." Unfazed, he gave her a smug, self-satisfied grin. The most shocking thing for Aurore was the sight of the cats writhing to free themselves from his grasp and scratch him. 2 unfortunate beasts held captive in the hands of that brute, not to mention the cawing overhead that wouldn't stop and was as wounding to her as the man's smile. This was the first time she'd seen the neighbour up close, and now she knew exactly why she had never said hello to him. Ludovic looked up at the birds. Jokingly, he said, "I think you've annoyed them." "There weren't any crows here before." "Before what?" "Before... You're the one who's annoying them, on purpose now, it seems." "Oh, not at all. I'm a proper nature lover. See here." He brandished the cats. "Anything that makes this much noise is fine by me. They're so full of life. Aurore picked up her bags. She'd had enough of the screeching and meowing and this man in her courtyard, which had become a place of terror this evening. Hold them properly, I told you. You're hurting them. Don't worry about them. I know what to do with cats. It seems you know a lot about a lot of things. Less than you, by the sound of it. As Aurore turned and began heading towards staircase A, he called after her. Know what kind of crows they are? Check their beaks. They look like carrion crows to me. They're the worst, far more likely to attack. Aurore plunged into her brightly lit stairwell and raced up the 68 steps that led to her door. 68 steps climbed in a state of utter fury, convinced she was now safe from nothing, that there was no peace even in the courtyard where she had once felt protected, and she told herself it was time to buy that pepper spray she'd seen online, because she needed something to make her feel secure. She might even go so far as to spray the crows themselves and anything else that threatened her, because this time she was ready to wipe them out, all of them, everything, no longer on the defensive. Now she was ready to attack.